Shalom from Israel, I'm Ariel Ben Abraham. This week we're going to reflect on chapter 48 of the book of Psalms by King David. This one is attributed to the sons of Korah, as we were saying before. They were Levites serving in the tabernacle in the times of David. And David gave them credit for some of the Psalms, the book of Psalms. They were very, very spiritual. They were very, very connected to the essence of praising God because they were in the temple service. So he gives them credit for this one. Let's read verse 1. Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise, most worthy of praise in the city of our God, his holy mountain. So it's interesting because in the times of David, the people of Israel knew that the temple was going to be built in Mount Moriah, where the location of the Temple of Jerusalem is. So they were making reference already before David, they were making reference about this place. They knew that the temple was located in this mountain, so they were making references to this mountain. Now it begins saying, great is the Lord, the most worthy of praise. It's obvious reasons. It's the creator, so we have to praise him. Praising, and again, it's not just thanking him and acknowledging him for creating us, having created us, but to recognize that he is the ruler of his creation. Therefore, it's worthy of praise. It's like, we depend on you, God. We have to praise you. So it's an attitude of humbleness, recognizing our Creator. So this is the approach. This is the first we approach God is like, you are the owner of everything. You're worthy, the most worthy of praise. In the city of our God. So we're talking about a praise in a particular place. Now you may say, why not in a river? Why not in the sea? Why not in Africa or South America, Australia? Could be, I would say anywhere in the world, anywhere I can praise you. Say, no. In the city of God. Now it's interesting, we may say we can praise God everywhere. In New York, Moscow, Tokyo, Shanghai. It's no limits in space to praise God. We can do it anywhere we want. I mean, anywhere is possible. But this psalm is talking about, many of these psalms, by the way, talking about a particular place. The mountain of God. The city of God. That's cool. We're talking about Jews. We're talking about Judaism. That's what we believe, by the way. But Jews. So there's a place. We learn by these Psalms that there is a place to praise God. In his city, in his holy mountain. It's a specific place. That's why we say that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel, is undivided, an eternal capital of Israel. Because this is where the God of Israel dwells. Then again, it's a physical place, yes. We have to make that clear. It is. So we have to build the temple, the third temple again. We have to. In order to reestablish this connection, and this is the next part of it, the meaning of it. What is the meaning of this city of God, Jerusalem? What is the meaning of this holy mountain? It's the place where he dwells. What is it? Does God dwells in a place? No, he doesn't. I mean, he's beyond his creation. You know, we cannot describe him. He's undescribable. We cannot conceive him. But then what is the meaning then? So what it represents, what is the representation of this place? What is this city where God dwells? Do we have to find it in our own consciousness? So what is it then? It's a place in which we share something with God. You see, what do we have in common with God that we can share with Him? What is it? The goodness from which He created us. That's the way He relates to us through His goodness. So He wants us to be good. So the point of connection is the awareness that goodness is the connection. That's Jerusalem. That's the holy mountain. That's the tabernacle. That's the temple. That's the Holy of Holies. They were connected there. That's the place. Yes, it has a geographical place, the whole city in Jerusalem, yes. But also it has a place in our consciousness. Because one connection cannot exist without the other. Well, the meaning is clear. We have to start rebuilding the temple, this connection, this permanent awareness of our bond with God. So we make it to reflect physically as the third temple. And then the process is completed. Then we have to remove negative traits and trends in conscience, meaning those are the nations. And then after we defeat them and subjugate them through goodness, for the sake of goodness, then we have the redemption. That's the process. We have to begin individually, rebuilding this connection. And we do that by removing the negative things that we don't need, that have holding us back, holding us down, away from the goodness we want, God's want, and we want to make prevail in the material world. So, that's the city of God. You know, God doesn't dwell in wickedness, doesn't dwell in egos, fantasies, and illusions, doesn't dwell in negative traits and trends in conscience. That's not the city of God. That's not. We know, David has said it many times, the Torah says it many times, God doesn't dwell with anything different than His ways and attributes. He doesn't like evil, He doesn't like wickedness. He doesn't sit with the wicked. We know that. So He sits in His city. What is the city? Goodness. And again, mountain is a high place. The top of a high place. So what is this high place? The highest level of our consciousness. That moral, ethical guidance that we have in our consciousness, the highest place in our consciousness. In Freudian psychiatry, it's called the superego, like the moral guidance, the moral principles that guide our life. Verse 2, beautiful in His loftiness, the joy of the whole earth. It's like a particular mountain is the joy of the entire planet. Yeah. Now, our mystic sages say that in that point, the life source of the planet and human life and life in general, that's what this place is. So when standing in the Citadel, we are literally below this vortex of light that goes through us, through the whole universe, sustaining life. So that's one of the meaning of it, like beautiful, the joy of the whole earth. Like the life is happy that His source is coming from there, from this point. That's why Zion, Jerusalem, the temple, are so important. Because there is the connection between God, the spiritual world, and the material world. That's the meeting place. And that place is also located in our consciousness, in the highest part of our consciousness. Also, in the permanent awareness of our connection with God. That's the joy of the whole earth. And again, we have so many times that earth and the land are also allegorical terms of life. So we say the promised land, we're talking about the goodness of life. That's the promised land. So we live in the goodness of life. That's living in the promised land. So when they say all the earth is full of His glory, we're talking about life. So when we are alive, we are full of the glory of God. What is the glory of God? The sustenance of God. God's love. That's His glory. That's His majesty. Covers the earth. Sustains it. Like the heights of Saphon, a mountain, is Mount Zion. The city of the great king, and all the references like this is the city of God. And again, we're talking about a trait, a quality, an attribute, which is goodness, encompasses goodness, and all that comes with it. 3, God is in her citadels, like fortresses. He has shown Himself to be her fortress. So the strength of this connection is God's. Now, what are the citadels? What are the fortifications? What are the towers? We're talking about ethical principles. We're talking about good feelings. We're talking about positive thoughts, good thoughts. We're talking about good actions, but especially ruling principles of goodness. Those are the citadels, the fortified areas in this city. So we see that goodness, that represents Jerusalem, this city, is fortified by principles that are strong as fortification, fortresses. God has shown Himself to be her fortress. God is holding these principles. 4, when the kings join forces, when they advance together to occupy, to take over Jerusalem, they saw her and were astounded. They fled in terror. 6, trembling seized them there, pain like a woman in labor. You destroy them like the ships of Tarshish, shattered by an eastern wind. In other words, when the negative traits and trends and consciousness come to take the city, to take over consciousness, and its purpose of goodness, of doing, being, and having goodness, then God say no. He doesn't allow that. So they are defeated. They're in pain like a woman in labor, and destroyed like ships of Tarshish. Tarshish was a place. It has it's mentioned in several places in the Hebrew Bible, and it usually represents invaders, a city of invading forces, enemies. Okay. So the east wind. What is the east wind? We have said this before. We're going to repeat it. In Judaism, the cardinal points are different than the nation's cardinal points. For the nations, the cardinal points are north, south, west, and east. And the orientation points to the north. The north is always the reference. In Judaism, the orientation is to east. Why? Because the sun rises from the east, and the sun is an allegory of God. So it's coming from the east. So it's like we acknowledge God's presence. So the east represents not necessarily a physical or a cardinal point of orientation, but a reference. Like everything good comes from the east. So that we connect with the east as goodness. Now, that's our north. It's interesting because if you pay attention, when we said orient myself, like I'm disoriented. Orient means east. So like you get your orientation, you go back to where you need to go by knowing where east is, not north, east. So we orient ourselves in the direction of God in Judaism. So this is our northeast. West is the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. South is right, on the right hand, and north is on the left. So when we say in the Hebrew scriptures that the enemy, especially for the redemption times, the enemy comes from the north, we're talking about negative forces in consciousness that are represented by the left hand. It's called sinister, siniestra in Latin. Something sinister is something bad, negative, destructive, dangerous. So imagine if the nations trust the north, imagine what would happen. Like they basically are focusing in the wrong direction. And then we also have up and down. So our 6 points of orientation are not 4 as 6. But again, the point that we want to make is like you destroy them like ships from Tarshish shattered by an east wind. So it's like this wind that destroyed the ships coming from the north are defeated, destroyed by an easterly wind, meaning by goodness. So we destroy the sinister, the dark area by bringing the light from the east, which is the goodness. Goodness defeats evil. That's the idea when we understand that you destroy like ships from Tarshish shattered by an east wind. 8. As we have heard, so we have seen in the city of the Lord Almighty, in the city of our God. God makes her secured forever. This goodness is ruling our consciousness. Nothing can be against. Because we live by, for, and for the sake of goodness. 9. Within your temple, O God, we meditate on your unfailing, your faithful love, loving kindness. Within your temple, so that we have to be inside this connection, meaning we have to be fully aware of this connection. That's being inside of the temple. So in this awareness, we are protected by God's love. Verse 9, pay attention to it. Within your temple of God, we meditate on your unfailing, loving kindness, love. 10. Like your name, O God, your praise reaches to the ends of the earth. Everywhere. Your might hand is filled with righteousness. What he's good is for good. He's doing good for good. Righteousness, right hand, goodness. And again, this righteousness is the goodness with an ethical purpose. It's the righteousness. So the right hand is goodness, but at the same time, the ethical aspect of goodness, which is emphasized so much in the Torah and the Hebrew Bible all the time, like we see here. 11. Mount Zion rejoices. The villages of Judah are glad because of your judgments. This is judgment. It's like the way goodness manifests itself in the right way, in the righteous way, through justice, through truth. It's like with the truth in front, and the justice as the means to make the truth prevail. 12. Walk about Zion, go around her, count her towers, consider her ramparts, view her citadels, that you may tell of them to the next generation. So this is basically an invitation for us to be aware of what the city of God is. Just count the citadels and the towers. Walk in it, around it. So be aware of what the city of God is, what Jerusalem is. The ethical principles of goodness that protect her, that are strong, that are citadels, fortresses. So we have to be strong in our goodness, strong in our generosity, strong in our integrity, strong in our truth, strong in our loving kindness, strong in our compassion, strong in doing good deeds for the sake of goodness, and then become the means and the end with goodness. Verse 14, so you may tell to the next generation. We need to expand this consciousness. And we have to teach, we have to share this awareness and spread it out to our children and grandchildren. Like, there's a city of God in our consciousness. There's a city of God there in Mount Zion. There's a connection. There's a stronghold that God is saying that He protects, that He defends, that He's living in it. And we know that that's true because we know that it's inside of us. We know that it's in our consciousness. We know that it's a common bond with Him. And that's our stronghold. 14 and last of this chapter 48. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide even to the end. This is an eternal. When we're talking about trying to get this permanent awareness of our connection with God, is to be aware that once we establish this awareness, it's eternal, because God is eternal. That goodness is destined to prevail in God's creation. Okay, to be our guide up until the end. So we'll guide every aspect, dimension, and facet of life. And again, it has to do with the Messianic era, but again, we have to make it permanent in our awareness. We have to begin with this awareness. We have to begin with this awareness as the first step to get into that new consciousness promised by God for the Messianic era, in which goodness would be the ways, the means, and the end to know God. Because everything comes from it. And the goodness that He is reflected in His creation. We have to be aware of that also. So, with this we end our reflections on chapter 48 of the book of Psalms by King David, wishing you as usual an abundantly blessed Shabbat, an abundantly blessed week. Shabbat Shalom, and until next time.